All right, I'll call us to order back in this location. Let's move to 2.1 as we transition to our study session. We have a presentation on financial literacy and default management. David Donderwitz and team.
Awesome. Thank you, and good evening, Chairperson Taylor, board members, chancellors, colleagues, and guests. Tonight, the Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid and Scholarships is going to present on financial literacy and avoiding student loan default. My name is David Donderwitz, the Executive Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues to introduce.
Much shorter. Ari Clifford, I'm the Assistant Director of Title IV Compliance in the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships.
Good evening, everyone. Carla Gonzalez, nice to see you again. Assistant Director of Scholarships and Outreach.
All right, so we'll be discussing tonight the topics, the purpose, the cost of college, financial literacy, outreach programs, scholarships, work study, the cohort default rate, and our numbers at Pima College. In regard to disbursements and awards, and then timeline, conclusion, and our questions and discussion. So the purpose of this session is to help everyone understand the cost of college and understanding what comes into the cost of college more than just tuition and fees. Also, how we can utilize financial literacy to improve our students and how they borrow student loans across the institution, and then also demonstrate what we're doing at Pima College to avoid students going into default. All right, as we talk about the cost of college, people focus solely on tuition and fees, generally when they're talking about it, but generally there's many different aspects of the cost of attendance, and we're talking more about how much it costs to attend the institution or any institution for an entire academic year. So generally, when we look at our costs across the institution, we look at direct costs and we look at indirect costs. So direct costs, in theory, are costs that come directly to the college. Generally, that's our tuition and fees. And then sometimes we have books and supplies that will also be accrued through tuition dollars on the student's ledger. The indirect costs are generally living expenses, transportation, miscellaneous expenses such as a laptop, and then sometimes students who do borrow, they have loan fees. So looking across the state, I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple different institutions plus ours. This cost of attendance is at Mesa Community College, Arizona State University, and then also us. And each cost of attendance is reflective of students living off campus. So you'll see, looking at Mesa Community College, generally our tuition's roughly around the same for tuition and fees, but their living expenses are quite higher, and their transportation is a lot higher as well. So when you look at that total cost annually at the institution, we have about a $20,000 cost, and then Mesa Community College has about a $29,000 cost. So those are the things that are encompassed when we talk about cost of college. And then looking at a two-year degree, if our students go 2 years, we're looking at about $40,000 compared to Mesa Community College, which is close to $60,000. And then just to kind of demonstrate the cost of college as a whole, Arizona State, their cost of college is roughly around $36,000 a year. So when you look at that, obviously that's far more expensive than ours, but utilizing strategies to help our students borrow more efficiently and effectively is really combining 2 years of an associate's degree, then moving over to the Arizona State University. And in theory, you'd save about $30,000 attending Pima first and then moving on to the university. So that's pretty general across the spectrum when we're talking about an associate's degree to bachelor's degree transition. One of the reasons why we really get into the cost of college is we want to be able to be transparent about the cost of college, because it's a very hard concept for students and families to understand. So really taking a step back, because we do work in the field every day, we know that component of the cost of attendance is this, and this. But our students don't necessarily know that, and their families either. So really being able to break down that cost of college and really make it more feasible to them. And so that's one of the things that we've been working on here at PCC. And so one of the things that's really cool is we're actually the first community college in the state of Arizona to be part of the College Cost Transparency Initiative Act that's across the nation. So ourselves, ASU, U of A, and NAU are members of this initiative. And so that's really to help kind of streamline the process of college costs. So it's the same in theory at each institution as you go. The other reason we talk about transparency is really starting to kind of build that trust aspect that comes along with the cost of college. And being able to kind of stop, take a second, and kind of explain that to our students. And so one research study, and trying not to bore you here, but a 2024 study asked college students who they trust most at a campus. And the students came back and said they trust their faculty and academic advisors. And then the least that they trust is financial aid staff and then executive leadership. And so really when you step back and look at it, I don't know if it's too much of, they don't necessarily trust us. They really just don't understand kind of the processes behind. When you think about a student that's gone to school for 18 years, or sorry, not 18 years, but they've gone to school for 12 years. They've worked with a teacher over and over again, and that teacher's been guiding them throughout their academic career. Whereas a financial aid staff member, this is the first time that they're interacting with them, and this is the first time filling out a government form. So really that trust factor has to be earned. So having that opportunity to really sit down with those students and families and talk through those concerns that they do have. And then really just understanding as an institution is when we talk about financial aid, it's the big equalizer when it comes to access to higher ed. So most of the students that we do talk with, they need to have some sort of funding to be able to move forward with their education. And then just to kind of, before I transition over to Carla and ask any questions on your end, is the cost. Is really, this is the number one reason why Americans have stopped out of post-secondary education, is really the cost. And you could think about it in many different ways, but the way I like to think about it is more like emergency-based, is one thing happens because they haven't budgeted for it, they leave the institution. My car doesn't start today, I don't have a way to get to class, I'm just going to leave. And so that kind of mindset and not being prepared for education are really some of the reasons why we're seeing this happen more rapidly. And then just overall, when we talk about the national student loan debt, we're at about $1.7 trillion, which is a lot. I don't even know how many zeros that is. But you think about it, an average associate's degree, a student borrows about $20,000. But when you look at Pima College, is one of the great things that we do, is we're looking at about $11,000. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Carla to talk more about the financial literacy and efforts we're doing in that end. Oh. Yeah, we can ask, maybe when each of us are up here, that might be beneficial. Sorry about that. But did you guys have questions on that?
I do.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I'm not being obstreperous. I just want to point that out at first. Why do we include transportation and housing and things like that? Because so many of our students, their number one job isn't education. They have a job that they actually do, maybe two jobs, and they're coming to school part-time, 5, 6, 8 units. And I mean, I'm okay with us including that number in there, but they would have those living expenses even if they weren't coming to college. So when you guys are talking to students, do you point that out, even though it's included in there? Do you also mention that, some of these you would have anyway?
Yeah, definitely. Those are some of the conversations we have. And so for federal regulations, you actually have to have all of those components in the cost of attendance. So that is the reason why we do have them there. But yeah, we would talk through students about, as they work, this is money that you've already allotted to X expense. So you don't really need to borrow for that because you're working for that. And I think Ari will kind of get into some other slides down the road that break down it a little bit more. But essentially, when we talk to our students, generally, we emphasize if you have the Pell Grant, then you don't really need to borrow if you have the maximum Pell Grant because you are having tuition fees paid, then you have some left over for cost of attendance purposes.
Yes, in the slide with the cost of attendance, I understand why you have Maricopa Community College to compare, but why have ASU and not the U of A? I've heard the chancellor say that Pima has a fifth of the cost, so I was just wondering.
Oh, yeah, no worries. So generally, I picked the ASU just because their website is actually a little bit better in regard to pulling the cost of attendance information, so I was able to select many different options of that. And when we talk about the state of Arizona, the ASU actually disperses the most federal aid in the state of Arizona by far, but we can definitely get you the cost of attendance for the U of A.
Thank you.
The average PCC student borrows $3,665. So I guess out of the 35,000 students that attend PCC this year, do most of them borrow? I just want to make that clear for the board.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so we have about 1,700 students who borrow a year, which is a pretty small percentage of the students that we have. We generally disperse we do disperse 9,000 students aid. So of those 9,000, 17 borrow some sort of student loan or private loan.
And so of those who borrow, that's what they borrow. That's what's meant by
Yes, sir.
average student.
All right.
All right, thank you, David. All right, so can you all hear me? Yes. So building on our commitment to transparency in college costs, I'd like to share how Pima offers students various options for financial literacy. Our goal is to help students learn skills to achieve financial success, both in college and beyond. Earlier, David talked about students stopping out because they don't have a savings fund, right, to fix their car or maybe something, illness. And so it's important that our students learn how to strategize, how to budget, how to save. And so that is the intent of these financial literacy courses that we offer. So first, I want to mention Cash Course, which is completely free for students. These are interactive courses that offer over 12 key topics from the basics of budgeting to repaying student loans. Each module breaks down complex concepts and provides quizzes, examples, worksheets, and allows the student to grasp the information and the material that's being shared. Just in 2023-24, we had 475 registered users of this product. And although that is a small number compared to our student population, imagine what we could do if we could create more access and more awareness of these services. So of those 475 registered users, 719 modules were completed. So that's an average of 2.4 modules per user. So this also comes with an impressive score of 85%. So students are learning through these modules as well. In addition, we offer our Money Matters workshops. These are virtual workshops in which students, this is a collaboration between First Year Experience, 1AZ, Credit Union, and the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships. And through these workshops, we offer students information about retirement, about savings, about credit scores, identity theft, how to become savvy with their financials. So it is also open to all students and the community at no cost, and we average about 100 attendees a year with several sessions during the fall and spring semester since the inception of in 2021. And then we also prioritize outreach events. Through our office, we provide general information about Pima's programs, the value of a PCC education, and personalized support. This includes one-on-one FAFSA assistance, scholarship guidance, and also for their students and their families. As you all know, with a FAFSA, it's not just the student completing the FAFSA, it's also maybe the spouse or partner or the family. So it's not just the student that we work with. And we also offer information, presentations about student loans, work study opportunities, and other financial aid resources. And finally, I want to share that we also have financial literacy woven into our college curriculum. Through college-wide efforts, we offer these topics of financial planning are offered in our student success courses as well. So for example, in our Student 100 courses and other student success courses. Any questions about financial literacy?
I do really quickly, Carla. Can you, just to clarify, the financial literacy workshops, is that something that we create, or does your office provide, or is that the partnership? I actually went back and forth on the website, and I noticed that you guys have the partnership with Earn to Learn that offers the financial literacy. So do we create our own programs, or do we use theirs as a resource?
That's a great question. So the cash course modules are part of our default management program, and Ari will speak a little bit more about that. But it is one of the options that we receive as a partner, is those free online modules, and that's 12 topics, and these are separate from what our Earn to Learn program offers. Our Earn to Learn program offers a financial literacy course for our participating students in the Earn to Learn program. So not every other student would have the ability to take those courses. And then the Money Matters are completely different. Those are developed by First Year Experience, Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships, and 1AZ Credit Union. So we develop the curriculum and the activities. So it's considered a co-curricular program.
And I have two follow-up questions.
Sure.
So the Super Saturdays, are those still happening even through the summer?
Yes, they are actually. We do have one coming up in June. I'm sorry, I'm already thinking it's next month, but we're in May still. So June 7th, and then a few more happening in August as well.
Are those open to just PCC students or to everyone?
They are open to everyone, so current students and the public as well.
Okay, and I promise this is my last question. And I don't know if it'll be discussed later on, but when it comes to student loans, actually, I'll ask that. Is anybody else going to discuss that into further detail so I don't ask a question now?
Oh, absolutely. Ari Clifford will be speaking a little bit.
Okay,
about
then I'll wait. I'll hold off on my question
Okay.
on that one.
Thank you. All right. So next, I do want to dive in a little bit more into our outreach services and our efforts. And so through our outreach services, we do connect with students and create those strong partnerships. That's how we are able to stay in contact with those students, right? So we love to communicate, we love to collaborate with internal teams like dual enrollment, TRIO, First Year Experience, Workforce, and external local high schools as well, or programs like Earn to Learn, as we mentioned earlier, Youth on Their Own, the PCC Foundation, and other financial aid organizations. Together, we, again, offer customized workshops Presentations, we attend college and career fairs. We do training, actually, for other entities as well regarding financial aid and FAFSAs. We also work closely with the Arizona Board of Regents on FAFSA completion initiatives, and with the Metro Education Commission as well. So we do want our students to have access to the resources they need here at Pima. So we strive really hard to work on those collaborations. So furthermore, we do want to share, for example, some of those ideas that have come together and shared a need is, for example, in 2023, our inaugural scholarship fair welcomed 230 attendees. It featured 29 external organizations, and by 2024, the participation increased to 491 attendees, with 39 organizations participating. And so there was a huge growth there. With a 23% response rate, we learned that 52% of attendees had never applied for a scholarship. 23% were unaware that Pima even offered scholarships, and yet 71% plan to apply for scholarships once they discovered at the fair. So we had also an impressive 96% of students and attendees that found the fair helpful to them. So through the scholarship fair, Pima not only increases awareness of financial aid, but also empowers students to seize opportunities that make college more affordable. Any questions about our outreach? Okay. So I do want to share, the next slide is outreach data. I just want to highlight a couple of things. So there's a significant upward trend in engagement, if you notice, over the last 5 years. We have seen this growth through the partnerships with various departments, such as dual enrollment and TRIO, first-year experience. We've also expanded access to high schools. We have stronger relationships with the high schools as well. And so being able to come out to the high schools and other community organizations to help with FAFSA has been one of the reasons that you see those exponential percentages there. All right, so now I want to share a little bit more about our scholarship programs. So there are various sources of scholarship funding that are received by the college. One is institutional funding. The second one is from our Pima Foundation, Marcy here. And lastly, our external donors. So that's our external community, right? And so our institutional awards include the Pima Merit Tuition Award and the Pima Excellence Award. Those are just tuition waivers, so they only pay for the cost of tuition and fees. They don't pay for anything else. And this is a 2-year commitment for the students, so we do help them stay at Pima for 2 years, and then they can transfer or continue on, but the program only goes for 2 years. In addition, with our institutional funding, we cover our 50% of the Earn to Learn Scholarship Program, which Board Member Bernal mentioned earlier. So with this program, students are able to receive funding from Earn to Learn as well as from Pima, and the intent there is to help them reduce the amount that they borrow. So the more they're able to receive federal aid and their Earn to Learn program at the same time. In addition, our institutional funds also provide scholarships for all Arizona academic team. I know several of you have had the opportunity to join us and celebrate our students in the past, and our PCC Summer Tuition Award Program. Our PCC Foundation also offers scholarships for over 126 plus programs, and these are just the ones that are managed by scholarship, by the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships. They do have other programs, but those aren't managed by us with students. And then external organizations. So we work with over 150 donors. They're nationwide donors that are providing scholarships for our students.
Before you move on to the, I just have a
Yes.
quick question on this one. Can you explain to me a little bit more, just because my own ignorance, like for the Pima Merit and Pima Excellence, how do students qualify for those? Like, is that something they're applying for? Is it need-based, or one of them has merit in it? I assume maybe that one's merit-based. Can you tell me more about those two?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So with our Pima Merit and Pima Excellence programs, the students apply through our Scholarship Universe database. It is based solely on merit and also first come, first serve. When the program started, and I'll mention this in the next slide, but I have more data on the next slide, but when the program started, we didn't have as many students as we had funds for, and over the last few years, we've really shifted that. Now we have more applicants than we have enough funds to provide. So it is based on merit. The Pima GPA requires a 3.0 GPA or higher, where the Pima Excellence requires a 2.5 to 2.9 GPA. The award is the difference, so the Pima Merit covers up to 16 credit hours per semester for 2 years, and the Pima Excellence covers semester for 2 years.
Thank you. And I'm just out of curiosity, I know this is within the framework of what you're talking about, but we at some point we've been having conversations about the college launching our first bachelor's degree. I'm just curious, because a lot of this is built around these 2-year frameworks, right? So is the office having discussions about what that looks like once we start offering 4-year degrees?
Yes, absolutely. That's been part of our strategy, is how we would be able to allocate funds for 4 years instead of 2 for these particular programs. Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked the question, because the funding, the allocation that we receive is really going to dictate how many awards we're able to offer. So there's various factors that impact that. It's the cost of tuition, and also if there's any increases to tuition, then if the allocation remains the same, then there's less students that we can award. So it just really depends on that. But thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the scholarship programs? Okay. All right, so here I just want to point out a couple of things. So the total scholarship paid is the amount of scholarships that we've awarded through our office in the last several years to date. On the right-hand side, you'll notice the institutional allocation and how much institutional funds were spent. So I mentioned earlier, initially we were in a situation where we didn't have enough students applying, and we had more funds available than we had students, and we've completely shifted that to having more students apply than we have scholarship funds available to disperse. I do want to mention that the total scholarships paid does include both institutional funds, foundation funds, and external donors funds. All right, and with that, I'll go ahead. Are there any questions? No. Thank you for your time. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ari.
Thanks, Carla. Okay, so next I would like to highlight one of the Title IV programs that is not often talked about. The Federal Work Study Program offers students the opportunity to gain professional experience while they're earning wages to help with their educational expenses. The professional experience affords students the space to explore jobs that support their program of study, or they can actually participate in community service organizations. In order to receive the Federal Work Study funds, we actually have to partner with community service organizations and employ students in those functions. Literacy is a highlight there for K through 12 students, so that's something that we have a focus on. But this is why the community service partnerships that we have are vitally important to keep the Federal Work Study program. Additionally, it can't be overlooked that students who participate in the work study program gain knowledge about how Pima works. They gain skills that help them assist them in their learning in the classroom and improve their ability to compete for jobs once they graduate from Pima Community College. The students we hire are often hired part-time and full-time in the place that they work. We have students who work at every Pima campus in a myriad of different departments, and they support the very work that we do. Sorry. The students who are hired in the community service areas can choose from different community service organizations like Habitat for Humanity, United Way, Literacy Connects, Goodwill, Tucson Festival for Books, Pima Foundation, and Youth on Their Own. There's more, but I won't bother wasting your time there. But students who work in our community often actually learn that they have a passion for serving our community and then continue volunteering after they graduate from Pima. OFAS has held a Student Employee of the Year ceremony for more than a decade to honor student employees that are hired in this program and also other student employment programs. You may not be aware that students are hired as peer mentors, navigators, tutors, and even veteran work study. So in this ceremony, everyone can be nominated, and we honor all the nominees, and then actually the foundation generously supports that and gives nice little scholarship awards to the students that win the awards. So we get to read all the nominations, and I can tell you our students contribute a fair amount to our community and this college. So the ceremony was recorded this year, and so it is included in the resources on your executive if you'd like to, board summary, if you'd like to watch it. But tying this back to the subject at hand, student employment assists students with educational expenses. Students who participate in the program often borrow less or not at all. Let's go to the next slide so I can tie the information that we've learned up to this point and why student employment and scholarships are vitally important to solving the loan indebtedness issue for students. So this is the famous cost of attendance slide that we were talking about. So the cost of attendance represents the absolute maximum financial aid of any kind that a student can receive from any source. So this would be scholarships, Title IV, outside scholarships, like whatever is in there. So the reason we use the cost of attendance is because that is a federal regulation, because that's the max they can ever have. So as you can see, there's just a little bit of comparison here. So if a student has $16,000 as a cost of attendance, that does include housing and travel as we went through, and they get a Pell Grant of like the max $6,300. I'm using nice round numbers. These are not this round and not this nice in general, and then they get a $1,500 scholarship, and they get work study, and they're able to earn $8,500. As you can see, that equals $16,300, and that leaves them $0 to actually borrow. So they literally can't borrow. But in exact opposite of that, students that maybe just get the Pell Grant, now they have tons of room to be able to borrow. So literally, your federal work study students, when you offer them student employees, borrow less. Sorry. Let me just see. Sorry. Oh, I wanted to mention too that a student without a college credential, without credit, and without a job can borrow a loan. A student straight out of high school can borrow $5,500 to their first year and $6,500 their second year as a dependent student. As an independent student, that significantly raises to $9,500 or $10,500 each year. So for an example, the loan indebtedness of $10,500 at the current interest rate, that would mean that the student would owe a $119 student loan payment over a 10-year period, and actually would cost them $14,326 total is what they would be paying for that $10,000 loan. Also, it should be noted that students that are only taking part-time classes, half-time enrollment, are eligible for student loans. So our students that may take 3 to 4 years to graduate in a 2-year program going part-time will borrow loans probably for 4 years if they're borrowing. They can. So it's really important that we take a notice of that too, because what that means is if they borrow from us for 4 years, there is an aggregate loan limit. That means that they probably will not have enough loan money to go and get a bachelor's degree at a 4-year university if that's what they are pursuing. So literally, when they're borrowing here, they're taking away from that grand total that they can ever borrow anywhere else also. And according to the U.S. Department of Education's College Scorecard, Pima Community College has been doing a great job because only 9% of our students are receiving federal loans. The median debt total after graduation is $7,000 for the students that borrow. Not all of our students borrow, so I'll say that again. And that total monthly payment is about $74 a month. So we are doing a good job in this way about educating our students, and it's a lot of what Carla was talking about. So this is just some of the federal work study data, and what I would like to point out here is that our current funding level, we are sitting 100% on federal funds, and prior to COVID, we were actually increasing quite a bit each year because we were employing and doing all the things that we're supposed to do. During the COVID year, there was no working because we weren't here. We were virtual, and so that wasn't possible. So we came back in the 2021 year, but because we lost that momentum, so we didn't have as much applicants, and so we underspent that year, which impacted our funding for the next years. But now we are gaining again because we are doing all the things that we were supposed to do. But just like Carla mentioned, as tuition and fees are going up, scholarships aren't going as far, and as wages are going up, the federal work study funds are not going that far either. So as you can see, the last column here, over here, it shows that the wages have been increasing. So our money that we are getting is just not going as far. So we hire far less students. And the college currently isn't adding into this pool of money, which is, at a lot of colleges across the nation, they do a match program. So like if you get $500,000 of federal work study, then the college will put in a certain amount of money to sort of match those funds and make those dollars go farther so you can hire more students. The big number here is that we received 1,500 applications total, 617 unduplicated students applied, and we were only able to hire 119 students. So going back to that previous slide where Carla and the scholarship data that Carla's showing you and this data that I'm showing you, how do we help students solve the indebtedness problem? It's scholarships and work study opportunities. However, we are able to do less because we just don't have enough funding. Our funding hasn't matched. So here is the famous student loan slide. So most people do not know about or even consider an institution's cohort default loan rate. But this metric is keeping an institution's eligibility for Title IV funding. This is one metric that can take Title IV funding out. That means the Pell Grant, FSEOG, Federal Work Study, direct loans, all of the programs. So basically, it's a really, really important thing that we should know about. All of these columns, you can look at it more in detail, but really the important parts are the year published. We are currently in 2025, and what's important to know is that we're looking back to 2022. Okay, and this column all the way to the right is sort of telling you the time periods that we're looking at in order to calculate this percentage that we're held accountable for. Okay. So right now, we are sitting really great. We're at a 0% default rate. And that is very clearly because of a few factors. We've been at 0 for a while. You've all heard of the student loan repayment pause, I'm sure. The student loan repayment pause just barely ended at the end of last year. And so only now are students entering repayment. Well, if you can see, the numerator of this calculation actually has 2022, 2023, and 2024. Well, students weren't making payments. No one was going into loan default. So we have a 0% default rate. Looks amazing, right? But there are some events that are going on right now that everyone should be aware of that are going to cause this to have a drastic change. And that really is that 2026, we're probably going to be still okay because it takes a student over 300 days to go into loan default. However, in 2027 and 2028, we are going to see some differences. And that really is for a few reasons. Last year, the Fresh Start program ended, and the default consolidation option ended. During those COVID years, the 2019 all the way through 2024, if someone was in a loan default, they could come back to school, and as long as they registered and applied for financial aid, their loans came out of default. It was magic. And the same thing happened if they applied for a loan consolidation, magic, during those years. That is no longer an option. So if they did not take advantage of that during those years, what is going to happen? Here it is. Anyone that was delinquent from 2019 back, default 2019 back, are just going to be added right into our 2025 CDR. Just going to be added right back in, like as if nothing happened. So there's going to be additional students sort of in our delinquency population that were not there before. So, really for nice round numbers, some of the other things that I want to mention is, David's going to talk about this too, is actually we're doing a good job. Like I said, we're actually reducing the amount of borrowers, but when you reduce the amount of borrowers, you're actually reducing the denominator of this calculation, which can have a very large impact when you're adding in all of the really big borrowing numbers on top. So this is another sort of big impact that is probably we're doing a great job, but that really might have sort of a negative impact. So what are some of the takeaways here that I would love you to remember? Number one, we have been partnering with Student Connections. Student Connections offers Cash Course, which Carla talked about, but they also offer us help with CDR challenges. And what that is sometimes Department of Ed makes mistakes when it comes to how our CDR is calculated. They painstakingly go through every single person in our default rate, and they point out different sort of anomalies, and that we can challenge those and make sure that those get out. And they also offer, they call each one of our students that are going into loan repayment before and during, and they help them with public service loan forgiveness, applying for that, applying for different types of loan repayment programs that would help them have a lower payment. So they do amazing work. So that partnership is really important for this perfect storm that is coming at us. Just so you know, a 20% CDR will get us in big trouble. We're in hot water at that point. 30% will mean that they will be looking at canceling all Title IV programs. So our default provider they work with a lot of schools, and they have let us know that there are some schools right now that are projecting for 2027, 2028 in the 60s for their CDR. We're not. So take a breath, sorry. I had to tell you the scary part. We're right now targeting at 29, but not even 2 months ago, we were up above 30%. So our student loan provider is really doing a very good job at calling our students and educating them, getting them in payment programs. The financial literacy is so important, and making sure that all of our students, because really what we're here talking about is the financial aid students, right? But if they're not financial aid students, how are they getting this information? Because we're communicating with the students that communicate with us, FAFSA, scholarship applicants, that kind of thing. So really making sure that all of our students have this information, financial wellness, and literacy. Yeah, I kind of talked about that. Yeah, okay, so how can we help is we can ensure that our students are learning about financial health and wellness, and that they understand credit card debt and student loan debt. A lot of our students are taking credit card debt, which is actually a lot worse than student loan debt for a lot of reasons. So making sure that students actually understand the difference between debt and like different types of debt, and then also that they should be graduating from here with the least amount of debt possible so that they can pursue other things later. But according to the U.S. Department of Education, our repayment rate for graduates, the other really big takeaway, our graduates, right? Here it is, 26% of them are successfully paying their loans back. So that's our repayment rate. But remember, it wouldn't be 100%. There's a lot of reasons it's not 100%. But 26% is amazing, just so you know. But our default for that population of graduates is only 7%. Conversely, when we look at our stop-out students, our repayment rate is 17%, and our default rate increases to 16%. So making sure our students complete their programs of study is very, very, very important to this issue overall. Do you have any questions? Sorry, I motored right through that. Okay, please go.
I have so many questions. I'm going to start with one that actually just, if you could restate what you said about the Oh my God, I can't, the student loan cohort default rate calculations, you said at 20% would get us in trouble, 30% would happen, what would happen? We
So the
lose-
Title IV program, so like a lot of people, we call it Title IV, sorry, but that's the FAFSA. So any of the programs that fall under the FAFSA, those could be rescinded. Meaning we wouldn't have direct loans, Pell Grant, Federal Work Study, or the FSEOG programs.
Okay, and you said what, the storm that we are expecting in the near future, what would that put us at again?
Well, that's not calculated just yet. We're at a 0%.
Right.
Again, okay, so we're in a really great place right now, and next year we're projecting out at 3.9, but it's 2027 and 2028 because of our numerator. That is going to really be, that's the one to watch. That's the one to watch, and we are watching it very closely.
At this point, other than educating our students on making sure that they stay current with payments, is there anything else that we can do?
David's going to talk a little bit about that. I don't want to steal his thunder. So that is the biggest thing is like, don't take loans here. Save them, right? And getting that message out. We used to do financial aid orientations when I first started at Pima, but it was determined in one of our reviews from the federal government that that was like sort of illegal because we were adding specific requirements only to financial aid students and not to all students. And so, I mean, that is an idea, is actually like getting more of this message out and maybe even a strategies class where we can help them. We can say like this year one, you should not borrow. Year two would be better to borrow because your interest will be less because you won't be earning interest for the 2 or 3 year period. You'd only earn the interest at the end of your program. So there's strategies like that. We could talk about the scholarship strategy, Earn to Learn. There's a lot of stuff out there that students are just unaware of. And we have a lot of first generation students, and that's the reality of it, is who's gonna teach them if it's not us?
So I have another question. If you go back about 3 slides, you did your scholarship student calculation, right there. Go
Oh,
back.
sorry. Okay.
Right there. So we focused a great deal on the work-study program and having them participate in that rather than borrowing the money. But we know that there's significant budget cuts and changes happening. So I'm assuming you're going to tell us a little bit more about what we're doing as a college if that number were to go down significantly, even further than what it is right now, so that we do encourage them to not apply for those loans. Now, what are we doing? I'm assuming you mentioned Earn to Learn, you mentioned all the different things, all the different programs. I just want to make sure that we focus on several options rather than just go for work study, because like you said, the availability for work study is very limited compared to the applicants.
100%. I mean, like, in a perfect world, we would put more money into these programs at the end of the day. These programs will help 100% with indebtedness, right? Increasing scholarship, increasing student employment opportunities, period. It just does. So that's in a perfect world. I don't think that we budgetarily have that perfect world right now. So as a college, I mean, I'm hoping that, I know speaking with our leadership, David, Ariano, and Irene, I know that there are more conversations starting about sort of student employment as a whole at the college and sort of bringing those resources together and making them more available to more students.
And I appreciate that. I'll say this and then I'll leave the floor for the rest of my colleagues. But I can tell you that I was that student. I was a single mom, non-traditional student, and the student loans were what were helping me pay the rent and pay the bills so that I could go to school. So
Right.
while we do encourage our students not to get those student loans, I can tell you as a person that took advantage of those, it was the only other option for me. And so I do worry about that because it is going to impact us, not just as a society, but as a college, but individually. So it is important that we figure out a way how to communicate all the different resources that are available so that our non-traditional students don't feel the need to use those student loans for general living expenses.
And it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point, and I think that 9% of our students are in that bucket, right? I was one of those buckets also, single mom, taking out loans in order to finish my bachelor's degree. So 100%, that's why they're there, and hopefully they hang out. The other thing that's coming down the pipe as far as the reconciliation bill, I'm sure you've heard about it, is that the subsidized loans will be going away if everything is approved the way it is, and that will be detrimental also because while you're in school, those loans don't earn interest. Your unsubsidized do. So now we will have the growing debt problem for all of our students, which will also make that repayment number that I just gave you, that will go up because there will now be extra interest to be paid.
Ori, I have, so students who drop out, to me that seems almost impossible to pay anything back because they didn't get the degree to increase their salary earnings. And so there's another option for us to do, not just with our financial aid recipients, but with all of our students, to remind them how important it is to finish your degree because your earning potential will increase with that extra degree. So that was one thought. Is that incorporated into our, I mean, do we talk about finishing your degree? I mean, I know that seems so obviously.
I feel like this is a little out of my wheelhouse. I might let other people speak to that.
Let me ask one more question too. So when you were talking about the organization who contacts our students to remind them about, how does that happen? I mean, we have such a hard time at the college, you know, getting in touch with the students we have in class right now saying, hey, you haven't paid for your tuition yet, you're going to get dropped, you know, those sorts of things. How does this other organization do such a better job?
Well, I think that they have years of experience, number one. Number two, they have additional points of contact because all students that take out student loans fill out a master promissory note, which have other contacts that when you're trying to collect debt or when you're trying to contact them about student loans, they can use that. Whereas we wouldn't necessarily be privy to that information, like their mom and their dad and their grandma, cousins, you know, they have to put references on their master promissory note. So that gives them a little bit of a leg up. They also are available all the time. They have chats that are open. They do, a lot of people are just confused. And so the feedback I've gotten from our representative, Jean, is that when they're reaching out, the students just want to be on the phone with them and call the lender. And most of the calls that they do, that's what they do. They just want to, they don't know what they're talking about, and so they want somebody to interpret and sort of just be there with them. And that's the service that they offer, which is incredible.
Lastly, a couple of months ago, I was listening to NPR, and there was a discussion about this, you know, that students haven't paid for the last 2 or 3 years. 5 years. And so in many cases, if I didn't do something for 5 years, it might not even be in my mind that I have to do it.
1,000%.
Yeah, so is that one of the things that the people are calling up,
100%.
reminding, hey, by the way?
All of us, we all have budgets, right? We all have budgets, and you learn how to live within your means. Well, if your means haven't had that budget line for the last 5 years, have you saved for it? Have you done anything to pay that? No. And so now you're going to have this expense just plopped back in. And now they're like, figure it out. And then additionally, like I said, these people that were delinquent prior to the pause, they're just getting thrown back into delinquent status. So they're already behind the 8 ball, like from day one when this all, it's just gonna occur. And so it really is, it will be detrimental to many, many, many students. And it's not just us, right? It's across the country. So it's all universities, all colleges are going to be experiencing this.
And I'll just go ahead and close us out. I know we've probably gone over our time. But in theory, when we talk about or looking at the numbers overall, is just looking at the amount of aid that we have been able to disperse since 2021. This is minus CARES money. But we've increased the total amount of aid that we have dispersed about 18%. Looks like it's going to increase about 5% more this year as well. And then of that, 23% of that was gift aid. So that's aid that either comes through grant, scholarship, other means that doesn't have to be paid back. And we've increased that amount there and looking to increase again by about 8.5% there. And then the one thing, and I think that's what Ari and Carla both were discussing, and really those strategies that we're looking at of how we strategically use those work-study funds, the scholarship funds, is flipping that switch of what we did in the past to be more strategic about it. And it's really shown as just that decrease in the amount of aid or loan aid that we have dispersed is down about 9%. So when overall aid is going up at the institution and loan aid is going down, it's something that I think step back and say that's pretty amazing of what is happening, because not many institutions could say that around the country, that we are decreasing the amount of aid that is loan aid. And then I think Ari kind of just went over those risks quite a bit of where we're going to be and see potentially where we could be in 2027. That takes some time to get there, and Student Connections is working through those students. But I think we had hit the nail on the head there with that risk, is looking at those borrowers who don't complete. So first-time borrowers, students who withdraw, the students who are not making academic progress. Those are the students that are really our potential to affect the cohort default rate the most, because they're coming for a semester, a couple semesters, and then exiting, and they have no credential. They might not even earned any grades at the institution. They might have just withdrawn from all the courses. So really looking at those specific populations to get a better idea of where we are with those. So I think just overall, the mitigations of what we're looking at is, already hit it on the head, increase that program retention, persistence, completion in programs that have a livable wage so we can pay those loans back. Decrease borrowing, which we've been doing. Understanding how that CDR is positive and negative on our rate. So we need, at the end of the day, you need students to borrow in this calculation, but we need those students who are completing to borrow so that the CDR then equals the rate that we need it to. So that's those strategic points. And so really, I think starting tomorrow, we're going to work with STAR, and we're going to start working on some baseline numbers to really, I think, dive into the scholarship students, the work study students, starting to look at more of those students who borrow and really get a better idea of what that population that is. We know the at-risk population, but getting those numbers beside it so we can move forward and start looking at some additional strategies and being more strategic on that approach. And then as we talked about, looking at this whole, and we went through a lot today, but really that is what encompasses the whole process with the financial literacy, the borrowing wisely, even some of the stuff that we have in place for our students to borrow where we can, is really, it's the whole institution that's working through this. And so that is why we really have to make sure that those students are aware of what the cost is, but also if we're going to borrow, we got to borrow wisely and make sure that we're doing it that way, so we know that we have a better opportunity to stay within the realm of the cohort default rate that we need. And then just in conclusion is really just hoping that this illustrated that importance of cost of attendance, but also that financial literacy and how that plays to our students and how they pay for college is really understanding and the basics of having a budget when you go to college. That's one of the main things. And then looking at and looking strategically, I think, at the approach of funding for help to cover those costs of attendance, and then really just promoting. We are doing a really good job from those numbers. It really does demonstrate that, but obviously every process needs to be evaluated each year and make better as we move forward. And so I'll end there, and just one last thing. So just within this conversation, we're talking about loan debt. We've increased the debt to about $75 million more in student loan debt just by that presentation. So as we go up and we keep talking about it, we're just getting more in debt as we go. So I'll stop there for any questions.
I just want to say thank you to the three of you. I think I learned more in this presentation than I normally do, and it was really well presented and very thorough. So thank you for all the information.
Yeah, thank you. They're the real experts on this one, so appreciate their help.
Any other questions? No?
I would just, yeah, great job, team. The highlight, also in the reconciliation bill, if Pell is limited, and in the current iteration it is, we would naturally expect more borrowing to occur, right? So from a bigger lens, affordability and access to higher education. So it'll continue to be something we think through and think about, as that federal legislation moves through. Less opportunity for Pell would likely mean more loans for students. So interesting conversation to have.
And there's one added point, we saw it on our chats today, is just that the current administration is actually backing seems like they have some support for the gainful employment, financial value transparency approach as well. So that's another thing that, that was in the Biden administration that was put into play, and we did report as an institution, but there was kind of some thoughts there that would be nixed as soon as the new administration came along, but there's some contradictory information we learned today, so we'll dive into that as well. But
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? No? All right, Dr. Richmond, do you want to join us for 2.2, the review of refined mission, vision, and purpose statements?
Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the board, Chancellor Nasi, and colleagues. Thank you for giving me some time with the board today at the study session to talk about the mission, vision, and purpose of the institution, and to kind of bring you up to speed with what's been done so far in the review of the statements, and to invite your input and feedback. See if I can press the right button. I got it. All right. So for an overview of what we'll talk about today, so I'll summarize the purpose of the presentation, give you an overview of the topic and the mission review process we've conducted, then talk about timeline and next steps. Then we'll take some time for a discussion about the statements so the board can provide their input and direction on the next steps. So for the purpose, there are really two primary things. Firstly, I will present and invite feedback on draft statements for the purpose, vision, and mission. And I will also invite input on a recommendation related to the behaviors in the current mission fulfillment framework. Now, I want to be very clear from the very beginning. The mission statements for the institution are fully within the purview of the governing board. I'm bringing forward input and recommendations as developed by the strategic planning team, but you can take those recommendations, you can do something different, you can choose to keep the statements as they're currently written. It's entirely up to you what direction we go from this point forward, and I want to make sure that's completely clear at the outset, so you know you can change things, add things, proceed however you would like to. So as a brief summary, mission review is conducted in the year before we develop a new strategic plan. This is simply to reset, think about the purpose of the college, what it is we do as we meet the needs of our students and community, and ensure that we have a set of statements that we are comfortable with, that we feel reflect the institution, that we can then use to inform the comprehensive planning process. For this year, we have developed draft statements. They have been reviewed through an iterative process and refined. This process started back in the fall, and the most recent session was just a few weeks ago on this. And today, as mentioned, I'm seeking input from the governing board. Just to touch on the current statements, I'm sure these are all very familiar to the board members and my colleagues here in the room as well. Our current purpose is very, very short, transforming lives through affordable education, a slightly longer vision statement, and then a very detailed mission statement. People often use the tagline, empower every learner every day for every goal, but the full mission statement is actually much more detailed than that and includes a lot of information about what the institution does. We also have the behaviors. These were new in the mission fulfillment framework the last time we conducted this review, and they're more descriptive about how we go about fulfilling the mission of the institution. And you can see the list of those here. In addition, I wanted to highlight some additional resources that have been provided to the board. We've conducted a number of surveys. We've had a number of open discussions about the statements. All of the input we have received has been made available to the board as part of this session today, be it survey results, futures conference input, planning day input, just to ensure we're being as transparent as possible about all of the input that's been received. Now, we have gone through a multi-step process in the review of these statements. I won't talk about all of this in detail. You can review the details should you wish to. We started with open sessions just to give a feel for the direction where people felt about the current statements. Then we had a survey that went out to internal and external groups so we could gather feedback on the existing statements. Do people like them as written? Would they like to see minor changes, major changes? And we gave people the opportunity to provide comments. Based on that input, it was fed into our strategic planning team, formed this year to conduct both mission review and develop the next strategic plan. I'd like to mention that Michaela Hayes, the faculty co-chair of the strategic planning team, despite the fact this is summer, let me know today that she was going to attend today, so she's here and available should you have any questions for her. Thank you, Michaela, for being here. And through an iterative process, we took the statements through the strategic planning team. Then we took them to planning days, which are employee-focused events to gather feedback. We refined the statements. Then we took them to the 2025 Futures Conference and refined the statements, took it back to the strategic planning team, and then put the final options as they look from the strategic planning team, or SPT, out to a survey to gather input on those. And that essentially gets us to where we are today in the process. So today, I will share some draft statements and gather your input. You may like the draft statements, you may prefer the originals, you might want something completely different. It's all good. I will take detailed notes and take that feedback away to figure out next steps. But I would also importantly like the board's input. If you are comfortable with a set of statements, whatever they might be through the conversation today, I'd like to get your feedback on whether you are comfortable with us bringing those statements forward for formal adoption at the June board meeting, or if there are some additional review steps you would like to see happen and to have these come to you in the fall. That is the second thing on which I'll seek your feedback. And please keep that in mind, what you would like that process to look like as we go through the conversation today. So let's move to the discussion stage. That hopefully gives you a picture of the background, how we got to where we are today. And I'm going to share with you the statements as they currently look, the most recent survey results. I'll touch on a couple key things that were key discussion points for the strategic planning team and actually others through this process. And then we'll go through each statement one by one, and I'll pause on each one for discussion and input. First off, I did want to touch on the nature of these three statements. So purpose, vision, and mission. Purpose essentially is our fundamental why. Why do we exist? What's our purpose for being? Vision is an aspirational state of where the college, the community will be down the road on the basis of the work of the institution. There's kind of a couple of competing philosophies around that of whether a vision should be achievable or not. That's a decision for the board, how you'd like to approach that. And then we have mission. Now, mission is most typically described as a summary of the current work of the institution, what we do, to whom we provide those services. Now, purpose and mission can be combined. They have been institutionally in the past. They could be again moving forward. And that's one of the key areas for consideration as we move forward. So the most recent survey we conducted went out to community members, students, and employees. There were two primary questions, and you'll see as I go through the three sets of statements that came out of the SPT where the primary discussion has been, and the committee was like, maybe, we're not sure, we need input. And that was, do we need a purpose statement? So do we keep that separate, or do we weave that into the mission statement so we can simplify, have one less statement to worry about? And where do we include affordable? Affordable has been probably the one word that's been discussed the most throughout the review process. It's a very relative term, right? Affordable for one person doesn't make it affordable to somebody else. But the committee went round and round trying to come up with an alternate way of addressing this and really couldn't. But one of the things that stood out to us in the first of the mission surveys we did with the student responses, affordable really resonated with the students we serve as a very important word that was important to them to see there. But we are unsure as a committee, does it belong in the purpose statement? Does it belong in the mission statement? Where do we kind of incorporate that? So those were two of the key things we were seeking to get input on through the most recent survey. So you can see respondent affiliation here. By far the largest group of responses came in from students, at about 540. With the assistance of Isaac Abbs and IT, we posted the link to the survey in my Pima, which I think helped drive up student response rates for this particular survey. But we also have responses from staff, faculty, a small number of community members, 17, and then 13 administrators. So I'm going to step through the 3 different options that we shared through that survey. First option does not have affordable in the purpose statement, but it does have a purpose statement, but here we have affordable captured within the mission statement. This one received 279 votes as the most popular option for those respondents. The second one, we have a longer purpose statement. We can always argue that short is good, right? Short and catchy. This makes the purpose a little bit longer, and it brings in affordable education, but the planning team didn't want it to just be affordable. We wanted to ensure it was clear that it was quality education. So that's where we came to expanding opportunity through quality, affordable education. And here the mission is shorter because we removed affordability from that statement. This was the one that was most popular among respondents, so 404 people selected this one, so having affordable in the purpose statement. And then lastly, if we don't have a purpose statement at all, and that was the one that was least favorable from the respondents who replied to our survey here. So for this one at least, the most popular option is option 2. But I would note, and the supporting materials are extensive, so I'm going to guess you have not had the opportunity to go page by page, because I know it's several hundred pages. But if we go all the way back to the first survey we did, the current statements that we have in place were also relatively well received. So that's a very competitive option here as well. But when we put these statements side by side with the current ones, these were preferred over the current ones. And it's interesting, last time everyone was all about wanting details, really long mission statement. This time everyone was like, oh, short as possible. Less is more. And so it'll be interesting to see from the board's perspective which way you lean on that, because of course it can go either way, however you want that to look. And so with that, hopefully that gives you enough of a feel about the process, the kind of input that we received. And now I'd like to open it up to input from the governing board. And again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, it's really important, I'll say it just one more time. You can use these statements coming from the strategic planning team, you can refine them. You can use the ones that we have in place officially now, or do something completely different across the board for these. So with that, the purpose statement, the current draft coming from the planning team, expanding opportunity through quality, affordable education. What are the comments of the board?
Thoughts, comments? While folks are pondering, I do like the fact that the word affordable is in there. I appreciate the thought that everyone was giving to how that's a relative term. Although I think in this context, I'm not sure that that really matters, at least in my opinion, because I think it's more a statement that we as a college will work to make attending here as affordable as possible. You can never deal with the other relativeness, but it's a nod to that. And certainly, as you're saying in the survey results, it was important to our students, and I can understand completely why. I think our value statement is centered within the higher education world. Like ROI value, not values talking about here, is that we're a more affordable option for individuals to pursue their goals. So I do think it's important that that's in there, and I like that it is in this version. Other thoughts, comments?
Now I wish I had gone first. I feel very strongly against the word affordable. I think it is important, and I would hope that we would address it through our marketing, heavily. But my thought is I would want students to come here primarily because of what we have to offer, the high quality, diverse programs, and that we happen to also be affordable. My 2 cents on that. I have other thoughts on other things, but don't know how the others feel about including affordable in our statements.
I don't have necessarily a position whether or not we should or shouldn't include it, but I 100% agree with you that we want the primary focus of why people come to Pima Community College to be the quality that we produce, not the price that they pay to get that quality.
I don't feel very strongly one way or the other, but I went back to 2010 and I did a word bubble on the comments. And affordable and affordability were really like the most important words to the folks that did leave a comment. I did notice that. And I know it seems like awkward to try to jam it in one of these statements, but it does seem like it's a word that's very important to folks.
You know, I think people who are from Tucson know that we're affordable because we always have been. And U of A tuition has, you know, doubled, tripled, quadrupled, even more than that since when I was a kid. And Pima tuition is still very reasonable. So I think putting the word in there, I never thought what you said, but thank you for sharing that because I do think that that is true. We want to talk about the great education, not necessarily if it's affordable or not, because it is affordable.
Any other thoughts on the purpose statement that's written there? No? All right.
All right, great. So we'll take a look from the perspective of affordable and how we might rework that. In general, if we exclude the affordable conversation, are you generally comfortable with this as a draft statement for the purpose? Okay, great, good, thank you. Okay, then let's move to vision. So this ideally is describing our future state. This has some similarities with the existing one. One of the key polarizing topics that came up in the statements that are currently approved was the little preceding statement we have as a premier community college. Some people love that. Some people really don't like that. So the draft as it comes forward does not include that language based on the current input, but that's of course something that can go back in. And I want to highlight that as a key thing that's not here, that's in the current one. But with that, what is the input of the board on the vision?
I have a question first. Do you know what they didn't like about the word as a premier institution? If you recall at all what it was.
Because it's somewhat fuzzy, hard to measure. There was some discussion about, how might we define that and measure that. It was also something that came in very strongly from some previous leaders at the institution, and that's not that that's a bad thing, but that more it's like, it's a new plan, it's a fresh start for the institution, new mission, new strategic priorities, new chancellor, primarily new board. And so those were some of the factors that were playing a part in that.
That's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind when you say that it's fuzzy, or that the input you got that it was fuzzy and that there's not really a way to measure that, how do you measure affordability then?
It's true. For that one, that's been a relative cost comparing us to other institutions. So we can use
I could go back and forth, but I think they're both subjective, so.
Yeah, no, points well taken.
Any thoughts on this vision, proposed vision?
Yes, I have some thoughts. I would argue that we're already doing this, and so when I think of a vision statement, I think of something that's aspirational, something that we hope to build, like you mentioned at the beginning, something that may or may not ever quite be actualized, but something that we're going to be working towards, something very aspirational. And this, in my mind, is something that we're already doing. And of course, it could be argued, what is innovative, right? I mean, all of these words can be argued, but my thought would be that this needs a major rework.
Other thoughts? Go ahead.
I agree with Board Member Barraza.
Just a quick note, we all submitted our recommendations, and I'm looking at the ones that we have, and I agree with you. I think that ours are very much aligned, where it's a vision, where it's where are we heading, where are we going, whereas in this one, I don't know, it doesn't speak to me. I'm sorry, it doesn't speak to me. Not the way that I think a vision statement should.
In the document, it started off with F. Initially, I thought that was faculty, so I looked at it because that was the first that interested me, but then I think that they're sort of chronological: A, then B, then C, then D. This was F. But anyway, in the F document, there's quite a few statements just like that, that the vision needs to be exciting and looking forward to the future and all of that. So I think that a lot of people, I think, have that view that this vision statement needs to be out there and exciting.
And just let me chime in. I don't have a vote, of course, but this is the kind of feedback we want from the board. We want honest candor, because these words matter, right? We'll be living with them, and so we want that kind of feedback that will help give us some clarity on where to go next. So much appreciated.
Well, and I think that also excites us. Like when you have a very aspirational vision, it kind of frames the work that we want to be engaged with. And so it's inspirational for us too, as well.
Great. Other feedback on the vision? No? All right.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And let's move to the mission. So this is the one most significantly changed from where we were before. Very, very lengthy mission statement before, now shortened down to this. Comments? What do you think?
I think I mentioned this in a prior meeting maybe too, but when I was at the HLC conference, I think it was in October last year, I attended a session where the administrators from HLC were talking about, with the new iteration of how they're doing the reauthorization of universities and colleges accreditation, that they are focusing on the words that we use as our mission way more strongly, predominantly. And so I think that what I felt about the vision statement was that it needed to be more exciting. I think that the mission statement, we need to make sure that whatever we write in here, that we'll be able to show proof and evidence that we're doing what our mission statement says. And I just want to bring that back to the forefront, because ultimately, if HLC is going to use what these words say to evaluate us, we need to make sure that we can provide evidence.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or feedback?
I'm not sure how I'm going to articulate this, but one of the things that I really appreciate in the mission statement, and it's something that Chancellor Nassi says all the time, I come from a background where industry is an important and significant partner of the community college. One of the things that Chancellor Nassi says all the time is that we are an organization that has industry-driven curriculum. And so for me, that should be have some, not exactly in those words, but what we produce, what people should expect in industry partnerships should be, for me, included in the mission statement. I know that I provided a version of it, and I don't know if you've seen it, but to me, that has to be part of the mission as well.
Any other? I have a few comments, but I don't want to jump ahead of it. I'm wondering about the phrase "an open admissions institution" and why is that important? Because when I just read it, that struck me as a really clunky phrase that seems like it's trying to be like shoehorned into here somewhere, but maybe there's some importance to that phrasing that I'm not understanding. I know it existed in sort of the, I don't know, the like sub language of the previous, but like under the empower every learner, it was embedded in there, but it's stayed through in both of these. So I'm wondering why.
I can give a little bit of background on that. So not for the most recent mission review back in 2021, but the one before that. There were some concerns that came forward from the community related to the work of the institution and some of the things that happened 15 years ago now, 13, 14 years ago, a long time ago now, under the leadership of Chancellor Flores and Provost Miles, when we made some notable changes that impacted developmental education and access to those courses at the institution. Through part of those concerns, I mean, it's one of the things that led to probation and the things that happened through the HLC, which arguably is the best thing that could happen to us because it forced us to make lots of really important positive changes at the institution. But whenever we've conducted mission review, we've heard loudly from a group of community members that it's very important to them that we clearly specify we're an open admissions institution so that the mission can bring them a sense of confidence, I think, that the institution will not repeat what it did under previous leadership, again, 13, 14 years ago. We periodically hear from members of that group. One of them spoke up at the Futures Conference in support of including open admissions. So there's a group within community to whom this is important. Now, does that mean it has to stay in the mission statement? No, of course, that's the decision for the board. But that's the background on why that was added to our mission a few review cycles ago.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Greg, could I just ask a question? So, in my mind, I was here when Flores sort of limited the number of developmental education classes that we offered. But I would like to ask, what exactly does open admissions mean? Does it mean that a student, anybody can come to the college with or without a high school diploma? That's open admissions. But I don't think that that is what we're talking about here. I think open admissions means that if a student wants to take a class, we ascertain if they have the prerequisite knowledge, and if they don't have the prerequisite knowledge, we help them get that prerequisite knowledge so they can take the class. Is that what open admissions means in this context?
It's essentially meaning that for anybody in the community who wants to seek an education through the college, they can do that from wherever they're starting to get into whichever ultimate. I keep hitting the microphone, I'm sorry about that. I talk with my hands sometimes. That they can enter the institution, that there aren't barriers, they're not being sent off to, we call it the prep academy, I believe, back in the day, somewhere else. That they are welcomed into the institution, whatever level they are starting at, so that they can proceed and be successful on their educational journey.
So is it true that we allow students to apply and get admitted even if they don't have a high school diploma?
I believe so. There are others who are more familiar with those criteria than me, but I believe so.
I appreciate the explanation. it was interesting. This is going to be kind of stream of consciousness, or sorry, stream of thought or whatever. But when I initially read that first one, and I do like the first one over the second one just because it's an active sentence rather than a passive sentence, but in terms of its voice. But I was like, oh, well, maybe affordable fits in here somewhere. But then I really thought about it and I was like, well, accessible really means affordable. Like that's part of accessibility. So maybe it's not necessary. But I think similarly to that way of thought, the fact that it says all learners, I think that includes, I understand the background of what you're talking about open admissions, but if it already says all learners, I feel like that is inclusive of that idea of open admissions, and then that phrase is not only clunky, but it's redundant. And so for me personally, if I was looking at the ones here, I would use that one on the top, but take out an open admissions institution, so it just says Pima Community College empowers all learners through accessible, high-quality education. in just in terms of kind of my off the blush, and also trying to reassure those folks in the community who are concerned about that we are also concerned about that, and that's why it says all learners and not specific ones. Any other thoughts, comments?
Yes, I agree with the deleting the open admissions in the same vein as I think that community colleges are an open admissions institution, just the way that I think that community colleges are affordable.
Just because I want to be a pain. Like I said, I really would love to see something that indicates that it aligns with the evolving industry and community needs.
Okay, great. Any additional input on those statements?
I really like that second part, and community needs, because I think that encompasses other things that, yes.
Okay, great. All right. So let me move to the next topic, related topic. So we also have behaviors within the mission framework. I mentioned them earlier. There's 7 of them. Through the review process, we've gathered extensive input from employees, in particular for this one, about behaviors and kind of where they fit and where they belong. Even early back as the fall, the suggestion came up that maybe the behaviors don't really belong within the mission framework, and maybe it makes more sense for us to remove those, put them in the employee handbook, and then return to values, which is something the institution used to use in the past. And so the recommendation coming forward from the strategic planning team is to make that change, remove the behaviors. They wouldn't go away, but they would go into the system that develops the employee handbook for review by that group, and that instead for the mission fulfillment framework, we proceed in 2025-26 to conduct an open process to gather input to identify values that we would then bring forward to the board for input. I'll estimate a year from now, maybe it would be slightly less than that. Is there feedback from the board on that direction, or recommendation, I should say?
I like the idea of values, just because sometimes it's shorter and to the point versus the behaviors where it's, I mean, I read them all and they're great, but not a lot of people are going to read through all that, versus clear words that illustrate what our values are, I think, do become embedded, and people talk about it sometimes, or at least candidates do during, or the administration. So my thought would be that I would love to see that converted into values.
Any other comments on behaviors, values?
Yeah, I agree. I always second that, because I think for me, every time I hear the word, and it's just me, right? But every time I hear the word behavior, I associate it with either good or bad, not necessarily a value that I have.
I'm just wondering if the handbook is the appropriate place to put it, though, because I could be wrong, but I think that, in the employee handbook, it's things that we require people to do, and I think that a lot of these values, to tell somebody you must have this value when they have a differing value. So I just want to, I don't know, Mr. Sylvan, you might be able to say if I'm in the right vein there. I don't know if we want to be putting things in employee handbooks if it's not something that, AERC and those groups haven't had a chance to talk about and think about.
And actually, for clarification, if the behaviors do move from the mission framework to the handbook, then it would go through the process, through the review groups, before it went into the handbook. The strategic planning team does not control anything with the employee handbook, so it would simply be us handing that over to the appropriate group for them to take it from there and proceed however they see fit.
Jeff, do you want
So the employee handbook in the employee code of conduct section does have more of what I would call sort of aspirational language, like we want employees to carry out their work in a certain way, and it does have more of that feel. But as Nick was saying, if that's the move that's going to get made, AERC certainly, working with the HR department, is going to work on how would you blend the concepts that are now in behaviors into the appropriate section and wording for the handbook.
I think this is, I mean, and I think Board Member Real raises a good point. I mean, in my understanding, at least theoretically, the behaviors would be moved into the handbook, but the values would be separate from that and not in the handbook, right? And okay, so then I think this is a good approach, because I do think that behaviors need to be derived from values. So to be able to establish values for the college as part of our mission framework, and then have that be then behaviors that would be in the handbook derived from that mission, vision, values, that makes sense to me as a structure. But yeah, I don't think we won't necessarily put the values in the handbook in the way that you're talking about it, because I think you're right in terms of how you're describing that. Yeah, I do think that any behaviors that we'd want to do there, though, would need to be grounded in values, and so the structure of this makes sense to me.
Okay, great, thank you. And the values would live within the mission framework, so they'd be alongside the purpose, vision, and mission, and then behaviors in the handbook, or however that's determined by the appropriate groups. Okay, are there any other inputs related to the behaviors and values? Okay, all right, thank you. So with that, I need to seek your input on next steps. So as I'm keeping mental track, so purpose, it sounds like we're close. There was an adjustment that was discussed, but we're close. Vision, what I'm hearing from the group, and your input is so valuable. Thank you for giving us this direction. It's like make it more aspirational. I don't know if it's necessary start from scratch, maybe start from scratch. Rethink the approach, something aspirational, something that's less clearly connected to who we are now, but something that's going to hopefully motivate all of us, right, to do bigger and better things for the community we serve. And then mission, close-ish, but weaving in that community need, industry need piece, and focusing a little bit more on the language in there. And then behaviors, I think we have a route there. So with that, we need to determine some next steps. We could take those statements that are close, bring them forward to the board in June, or once we have faculty back in August, I can reconvene the strategic planning team, have that conversation about vision, bring it back to the board in draft form, then bring the statements forward as a package once that vision statement has been reworked. But what's the preference of the board for how we move forward?
Any thoughts?
I think that thought that you had, Dr. Richmond, about waiting until the fall so you could reconvene the group, I think that that's a good idea. If there's not a time constraint on us getting this done in June, the more people contributing to that aspirational thought, the better, I believe.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, I don't think there's any great urgency that it has to be done in the next, 11 days, 12 days, whatever it is between now and June 9th. And plus, I mean, even if maybe in June 9th, we could move forward with pieces of it, I kind of do feel like they have to complement each other. So maybe as you're fleshing out ideas for the vision, it might change the way we would think about the purpose or the mission or the concepts that are expressed therein. So I think I'd rather see it all together when it's all done, and maybe even including the values if we have a chance to do that too. And if that means we wait till the fall, again, I don't unless someone else knows some reason we have to do it right now. I don't think there's any huge rush.
There's no time-sensitive need. There's no kind of external requirement or anything like that we approve the statements this year. The only caveat, and we've worked around this before, so it's really not a significant barrier, is that next year we're going to be doing a lot of the planning work around education master plan, facilities master plan, strategic plan, and more. The mission obviously is the foundation of planning work, but with the input and direction we received today, I think we have a clear sense of, from the board's perspective, about what you're looking for in those statements, so we can move forward with planning while in parallel we fine-tune these statements and rework the vision statement. So it won't hold up the planning work, essentially, which would be the key concern to the timing.
Great. Any other comments, questions, feedback, anything? No?
I would just jump in. So on the open admissions, right? No, you don't need a high school diploma to come to Pima, right? We have dual enrollment students who are still in high school. We have adult education. But of course, a diploma coming into a credit program is what most of our students have. But then there are programs, right, where there are limited access, right? We have nursing, respiratory therapy. So the phrase open admissions, right, there's, like a lot of the words you talked about, there's gray area there, you know, in terms of what's actually happening. I would also say if you are sitting there with a burning desire on particular language or statements like, I think the vision should be this, of course, that can come through me and we will get that to Nick and the team to consider, because that's fine too. Sometimes that happens if you have something you want to just put forward for consideration.
I just have one more comment, and this is completely personal, but back before 2010, HLC was coming, we were in a little bit of troubled waters, and employees were told, make sure you have the mission, the vision, and the whatever the third one, the purpose, whatever the three were, we needed to have them memorized. And I really tried to memorize them, and I was unable. And part of the reason I wasn't able was because many of them were very, very long. So I do believe that brevity in these kind of statements does have some value, because more people will be able to remember them and repeat them quickly without being forced to memorize them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great. Thank you all very much for your input. This has been extremely helpful, valuable input. So thank you very much for your input and your time. And I will be back in the fall with updated statements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. We appreciate it. If there's not anything else, then we hit the end of the agenda. No? All right. So we're adjourned. Thank you.